Hi, I'm composer and sound designer Gary Hibner here from Tuts, and in this video, I'm getting on track with Logic's articulation sets. Now, with the Logic 10.4 update, one of the biggest features to appear and one that's going to be very popular with composers that work with sample libraries is the introduction of articulation sets and with how they work with the switching of articulations in instruments. Prior to this, you had a combination of different methods. One of the most common being key switching, where you sort of had to hit a key before the articulation change, and for a number of reasons, this came a bit messy. You had these sort of extra MIDI notes that had to be written in to sort of do the key switching or articulation switching. And you sort of had to move the MIDI note just before the note that you want to key switch. So it looked a bit messy with these notes all the way down in the sort of lower range that you didn't hear. And also, if you went across to the score editor, it was just a bit messy with these low notes representing the key switching. And if you wanted to sort of orchestrate this out into some notation software that you wanted to print out for some players, you'd have to go in and remove all these key switching just so it looked a bit neater. And that's where articulation sets come in. It's sort of been in Logic for a while in a thing called articulation IDs that you could sort of view in the event editor. But now you've got the new articulation update where you can set articulation sets. So I'm really glad that Apple have developed this way more, and I'm pretty excited to see where it goes. So let's see how this works. Over here, I've got Logic's new Studio Strings instrument. And on this instrument, you can see there's this articulation box over here, and this shows all the articulations possible for this instrument. And currently, it's set to sustain. Now, if you go over to the track properties, down here is an option called articulation set. And now here, you can choose from a selection of Logic's articulation sets for that instrument. Don't worry too much about this. These are created by a third-party company called Babylon Waves that have written up a whole bunch of articulation sets for a variety of third-party instruments. I'm going to do a video on this a bit later, but for now, let's just focus in on Logic's ones. And these are the violins, so I want to go to the Studio Violins articulation set. Now, what's pretty cool is down here in the piano editor, now I have access to the different articulations. So if I just remove that, set it to none, that box isn't there. So just make sure that you've set an articulation set. And what's really cool about this new feature is that it works at a note value. So you could take all these notes, set them to sustain, or set them all to staccato, or go through and set different articulations for different notes. Now that's where the real beauty comes in. Take a listen to this. So now if you go across to the score editor, it's a lot neater. Plus, it shows the different symbols for the different articulations. Now you're probably wondering, where do you get this? Well, if you go into the articulation set editor, here it shows you all the different articulations for the instrument. Each of these are set to an articulation ID. Then here you can see you can set the score notation symbols for them, and these will show up in the score editor. And then if you go across to switches, here it shows you the name of each articulation and what key switch or note range it's set to. So sustain is set to C0, tremolo to C sharp 0, and so on. And you do have different modes. This has permanent modes with different triggering properties, all the way through momentarily or toggle switches. I'm not going to get into these for now, but what's just really important is you can create your own articulations, set the symbol, and then assign the articulation to a note or key switch. Now that's pretty cool. So it's neatened up the MIDI performance, plus in the score editor, it's neatened it up as well. So it's really sort of solved two problems for us that used to exist with the previous methods. And another thing that I want to look at, or just another thing that I want to show you, is I said it works on a note level. Now, what's pretty cool about this is, let's say you're playing a C triad. You can set each note to a different articulation. Now, that's really just giving you a lot of control with this feature, all the way down to the note level. Now, the only sort of negative aspect I've got with this is from here you can't really see what articulation each note is playing. If I select it, I see it, but not really in the MIDI editor. You can go to the view option and you can choose set note color. Here you can choose to set it by articulation. So there's different colors showing that these are different articulations, or these are similar and these are different. But then I sort of lose the visual of the velocities, which I pretty much like. So this can sort of be a sort of personal preference. But personally, I don't really like this. I like to view my notes by velocity. And then if I go in and change them, I can see that clearly. So it would have been nice to have sort of a separate lane, like sort of Cubase has with its expression maps that show each articulation change. But maybe this is something that Apple are still developing on and will develop further in the future. But for a first release, it's a great feature which is really going to assist composers with their sample instruments with articulation changes. And you can even create your own articulation sets for your third-party instruments. I'm not going to show it to you in this video, so keep an eye out for that. In my next video, I will go into deeper on how to set up articulation sets with third-party instrument libraries. But for now, try it out how it works with Logic's built-in instruments with articulation sets, and that's the Logic Studio Strings and Studio Horns. And just get a really good understanding on how these articulation sets work. It's a great feature, and I can't wait to see how it develops and sort of progresses so it really gives you even more and more control with your sample libraries and articulations. And if you liked this video and found it helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel to keep up to date with future videos. That's me, Gary Hibner from On Track Tuts, signing out.